Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Red Sea podcast. I apologize for the slightest delay of a few minutes. I, as usual, had tech issues. Shocker at this point, I know. Welcome to the second and thankfully last show where I will be seen like a weirdo sitting on the floor. But as always, as we've said, we'll always find a way. We'll always be here when we need to be here. And God knows there is a lot to talk about. And thankfully, after a minute, I'm not alone. RSP is complete again after a long time. How are you, man? Been a minute.
Yeah, no, good. I'm glad to be back. Just been a busy couple months for me, but hopefully heading into the season now, I'll be able to join a little more often and hopefully have some better things to talk about than we've had the past few weeks, and hopefully some new signings coming in.
God knows it's been busy, God knows it's been chaotic, and God knows it's been everything in between. I think the more fitting start, though, while I find my notes and stuff again, is for you to give your first and general thoughts about the drama that happened 2 days ago, and in the end, what ended up being Jose Luis Mendilibar staying and continuing at Olympiacos, and the whole statement of the team mentioning domestic success and the Europa League final of all things.
Yeah, no, I mean, uh, yeah, kind of just to start with, I think that there was genuine criticism and a reason to look at Mendy Libar and the path forward for the club. Things haven't been right on the pitch really since Amsterdam. Like it's crazy to say like that. I feel like that was genuinely our last performance where we were just like very happy with everything. There wasn't a lot to criticize or be worried about, and that's a worrying trend for any manager. Obviously, Mendy Libar has a lot more leeway than I think any other manager has ever had at Olympiacos and possibly will ever have. But it was a good time to bring things up after what happened with Nijmegen. I think all of us had that expectation that making the Champions League was going to be very difficult, but at the minimum, we had to make it past that team. And I think the way that we played as much as the result was just so far departed from what our club standards are and what Olympiacos has accomplished under Mendilibar and just generally in Europe. I mean, I think that was definitely one of our worse eliminations, and we've had some very bad ones even recently. So I think that it was good that the club was having those conversations and really making sure that things were aligned. And I also think that it's good that Marinakis made the decision he made. Um, I understand the frustration with Mendilibar. After the Nijmegen match, especially, I would have understood if he would have gotten sacked. It wouldn't have been my choice, but I would have understood it. But I think where we're at, it's like, if you were going to make a manager change, you had to make that change in May or maybe June. But we've already through preseason. We've already made most of our signings. It's a Mendilibar squad. If you bring a new manager into this, you're not solving any of those problems. And in fact, you're probably creating many that don't exist yet. So I think right now the best decision is to keep him on. His contract expires in June, obviously, of next year. So if things don't go to plan this season, you don't renew him. You give him a dignified send off, which I think he deserves, regardless of how things have gone recently. He is the greatest manager in the Olympiacos history. I don't think that's up for any debate. So I hope that however he leaves the club, whether it's this summer or in the future, that it's like that he gets to leave in a dignified way. But going forward, that does mean this season, if he is to stay, there does need to be expectations set. Obviously, it's always the expectation that we're winning the title and competing for the cup domestically, but in Europe as well. I mean, we've already started Europe very disappointing this season. So now, what's the response going to be? It is potentially a little lofty to say that we're going to compete for Europa, but I like that that's where the minds are at that are running things at Olympiacos. I don't think it's impossible. It's improbable maybe, but it's definitely not impossible. And I think with some of the signings that we're linked with right now, it could be. Who knows? But there are some very big clubs in Europa this season. I think this is going to be one of the tougher Europa leagues. So I mean, personally, for me, I just want to see us go far. I think quarterfinals probably is where most people would put their floor for this team as far as what we consider a successful campaign. But who knows? I mean, we would have never thought that we could have made a run in the Conference League. So Olympiacos has shown that if any Greek club can set those goals, it's us. And if there's any time for Libar to pull off another miracle, it's now, because his job very likely depends on it. So I think the resolution that we came to was the best one, and hopefully it translates into improved results and hopefully some squad changes, which we're already starting to see, because I think we've really gone stagnant in that department. We have several players that I think probably have either overstayed their welcome or overstayed their role in the squad. So I think that'll go a long way to helping, but it's just unfortunate that we waited this long to make a lot of these moves.
Before we go into the main focal point of the episode, which is, of course, the billion open fronts that Olympiacos is working with right now, I wanted to point out specifically exactly what you said, which is that this is the ideal way to go. Since Mendy didn't go in May, you don't renew him, but you give him the season, you give him everything you can, and let him walk next summer either a hero like he deserves, or to be remembered as one of, if not our greatest coach, either way. But I'm not going to get that much into it myself. I went on about a 30-minute-ish rant last episode about this subject alone. Go catch it if you haven't. And I'm immediately going to jump into this. The ins and the outs of a club running to cover about 7 to 8 roster gaps in the middle of August, as things stand. Not complaining, because stuff, it's the definition of better late than never, if you think about it, because stuff seems to be aligned. We have Moncada working, we have Cardoso working for the first time in forever. It seems like Marinakis and Mendilibar are aligned on transfers. And I would like to start with the official ins, the two people that we know are here. And I would like to start with someone that for some reason, which I really do not understand, has been very underestimated. And I feel like you don't agree as much with the hype, even as I am very hyped, honestly. And of course, I am going on to talk about the man that has been nicknamed the conductor in his career, which is something I literally learned about 5 minutes before we started the show. And I am, of course, talking about Remo Freuler. The Swiss veteran in midfield has officially signed, I'm pretty sure, what is a 2-year contract with Olympiacos. And it's a profile that Olympiacos definitely missed. I'm not going to compare him necessarily to Iborra because it is a different player, but leadership-wise, you can really see where people go when they mention that we haven't had a profile like this since Iborra. The strengths that I personally have pointed out is the distributing department, which Olympiacos misses so much. In the midfield, definitely a player that dictates the tempo. I would argue that you can call Freuler a deep line playmaker. I think that would be very fair. I have, and we all have noticed, having seen him from that horrific game against Atalanta, that this man does tend to drop back a lot as well, that this man has a terrifying passing accuracy that is more often than not above 90%. This man has, I'd even argue, elite positioning on the field, especially defensively. This man, without any disrespect to Dani Garcia, this man actually uses positioning to cover what he doesn't have in athletics, and he's almost right there every single time. And I mean, what really is the perhaps self-evident positive of bringing in someone like Remo Freuler is the leadership. Olympiacos missed a leader in midfield. They missed a veteran in midfield that can step up, that still has a lot more to give. And shockingly, quote unquote shockingly, this man has the lungs of a 25-year-old. And I feel like we all saw that in the World Cup as well. We are talking about a man that fits Olympiacos. We are talking about a man that wanted to be here, first of all. And we are talking about a man that fits League Bar football a lot. If I had to say some negatives, it is, of course, the physicality that could be pointed out as a negative. And I did kind of note it down, even though he does cover for it in other aspects. There's no goal threat. This man doesn't really create chances. He more moves the game. He doesn't go up and shoot. He will more often than not be the man that stays back to cover the gaps while the team is on the attack, especially on counter-attacks. In a more general matter, this man has a big CV. This man has had an incredible career. Of course, starting off in Switzerland, going at, I am sorry because I am about to butcher this name, Winterthur, then going to the more known Grasshoppers and Luzern, then the absolute leader of the golden era of Atalanta from 2016 to 2022, being one of, if not the best player all around in that time totally. Then the unlucky, unnecessary perhaps move to the well-known Nottingham Forest that really didn't go well. And then this man returned to Italy, became a legend once again, this time for a rising Bologna, for which he had, especially in the last season, he played a total of 39 games, having an incredibly full season. And something that I do want to point out before we get to your opinion and I get to the comments is that perhaps in the same way of another transfer that's getting very close to done, if not done already, he can be a very, very good mentor to players like Musa and players like Christos Philis. So, apart from, okay, he's a veteran, I really don't see no negatives to this one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think, that's the main reason why I'm not super, super high on the signing is just because I would prefer us to not be signing guys in their mid-30s as much as we can possibly avoid it. But he has a reputation and a record that you can't really argue with. What I would say is like there's not a good comp within Olympiacos or within Olympiacos recently for the kind of player that he is and the role he'll fill. But from like a Super League standard, and again, I'm going to say this, I think he's much better than this example. But I think of like a Stefan Schwab at PAOK. He came in, I mean, he played a very crucial role for them in some title winning seasons for several years. I feel like that kind of player that is going to dip back between the lines and just really create that solidity between defense and attack and the rest of the midfield. That's something that works in Greece. So I think, he's obviously more talented. I think that he's going to definitely come in and be a very solid player for us. And I think, having guys like him and some of the other rumors that we're linked with that we'll talk about later, really solve some of those problems and make us less reliant on guys like Dani Garcia, which again, personally for me, I do not understand why he plays so much for us. But it makes us less reliant on someone like that. And it also opens up players like Musakitis, like Chiquinho, that even Fortunis playing further ahead, where they don't have to worry as much about the dirty work, right? Even Santiese, I mean, part of the reason why he hasn't really gotten up to speed yet is because he's not fully fit coming back. And last season, we had to run him into the ground because it was basically you play Santiese or you're playing Dani Garcia or you're playing both of them at the same time. So having other guys that you can rely on to, again, just do that dirty work in the middle and be that link, I think is super important. So despite the fact that I'm not super thrilled with his age, I think he's going to be a good player for us. I don't have an issue with that signing. Especially considering, I think the rest of our transfer business, for the most part, that's upcoming at least, is focusing more on guys who are either reaching their primes or, in their primes right now, rather than guys that are probably past the best.
And to kind of play devil's advocate a bit, bringing people in, because he's not the only one, that can push back Dani Garcia and have him be at like 4th, 5th choice makes Dani Garcia perfectly useful once again. It turns him into a positive for the team, both on and off the field. It's the whole convo we had at the start of the summer again with missing leaders and stuff like that. Getting to some of the comments, just greetings to some familiar faces, especially this man over here, who is now considered a great friend of the show and in general. And getting into some comments regarding Remo Freuler, he possesses the leadership we need and the composure required to slow the pace of the game down when momentum is turning against us. Yes and no. And I'll explain my point. Remo Freuler isn't really used to slow the game down, especially in teams like ours, in styles like Mendy. I'd argue quite the opposite, that when we get possession, I'd argue Freuler is going to be extremely useful in just pinging the ball to the striker or the wingers. I'd argue it's going to be a more freeing usage than a more controlling usage, if that makes sense, of course.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, I think there's a point there, not necessarily in slowing us down, but bringing composure. I think that is one area where the current squad, and you saw it again against Nijmegen, that's why we lost this tie. We lost the tie because we scored the goal, and then we were physically unable to control the game after that. We did not have any composure in the midfield. Everything was frantic. The ball was pinging around. Nobody really had control, and then all of a sudden, here you go. And that was their equalizing goal. Balsa plays a long ball. We don't retain possession. All of a sudden, they're going the other way, and Pirolo's at midfield, not marking his man. Those are the situations where you need a presence like that. You could say the same thing about Leverkusen in the knockouts. They scored both the goals in the tie within a 5-minute span because we just lost control of the game for a second. So I agree with you that it's not necessarily slowing the game down, but it's bringing composure, right? Bringing that control in the sense that we're not letting it get away from us. We're not letting the other team dictate tempo. He can be like that metronome that it's we have a goal right now. We need to hold the game for the next 10 minutes while they're trying to push us. He's going to be somebody who can come in and have that experience, have that composure, and have the technical ability required to be able to help calm everyone down. I think that's the bigger thing rather than it necessarily being a slowing. Sometimes it might be, but just having that composure, having, an experienced, level head in the midfield is something that we kind of missed the past couple of years.
It's going to be both. It's definitely going to be both. And I do want to add on to what you said with perhaps phrasing the comment better as well. It's going to bring the midfield alive. Because something we didn't see with Nijmegen, especially in the first leg where Esse wasn't in the midfield got no usage. It was either goalkeeper to winger or defender to winger. The ball never played through the midfield. And I feel like the signings of Freuler and the man we'll get into in a bit kind of force the ball to play through the midfield and give possession even more security when it comes especially to games in Greece. He's, I think, a really good signing, especially for the midfield for Olympiacos, I'm guessing. And he's experienced player as well. I have seen him play. I think he's something Olympiacos needed, I suppose. Also, he could be a mentor to younger midfielders like Moussagitis. Exactly the thing that I pointed out, which I feel like is going to be one of the most important things to come, especially after a year where Musa has had kind of a stalemate. Not really, but he hasn't just flourished like he should have. We really do miss someone who can calm the game down. Usually our regular midfielders treat the ball as a hot potato. Ironically, I think this is the most correct comment of the night. I think this is exactly what I wanted to say when it comes to the effect that Freuler would have. And I really do want to point out what Freuler said as his first statements. Because again, I know that some people have said that first statements aren't really anything to pay attention to, but sometimes I like the mentality shown in them. Of course, the first thing that he said is that he remembers the atmosphere here and that he can't wait to play in front of the fans, that he wanted to come here. It was always his first choice, that he can give experience to the team above everything. He pointed out his passing ability and his durability, which is more or less what we said. And of course, the necessity for more titles going forward and the reclaiming of domestic success. Now, the second man that arrived here this morning is a man whose name I severely struggle with, like the common Greek commentator, as far as I've been told by fans of Zvezda, it's Ner Tiknisian. I hope that for the love of God, that's correct. Now, Tiknisian is a very interesting case because, as we were talking about off-air, this man has played everywhere. I don't know how or why, but this man has appearances down the entirety of the left-hand side, down the entirety of the right-hand side, and he's played as a 10, he's played as an 8, and he's played as a striker. I do not know how or why. He had a lengthy stint in CSKA Moscow, where he mainly played as a left winger / left wing back. He then moved to Lokomotiv Moscow for 4 more years, where he did more or less establish himself like an attacking focused left back, which, again, a reminder, is what Olympiacos needed right now. In Lokomotiv, he did record 122 appearances with 16 goals and 17 assists, which is crazy numbers. And then Zvezda bought him last summer, and now he's here. By the way, funny thing, Tiknisian's replacement is probably going to be Oleg Ryabchuk. Just thought that I should mention that. Of course, a regular for the Armenian national team. And now, positives, negatives is a long story because as far as I've understood up until now, we are talking about a very unique player. We are talking about a profile that is completely different to Francisco Ortega, if not just out and out better than Francisco Ortega, especially for a Medilibar fit. It's versatility in positions. As I've said, this man has played everywhere. He has a rocket of a shot. He's a scoring left back, which in my opinion is something we haven't seen since that goal from Oleg Ryabchuk is something we haven't seen since Tsimikas, arguably. There is a need for tactical balancing because of his vulnerability in defense. He is very attacking focused. This is an attacking profile. He is more of a physical player than an athletic player. He is very good at the one-on-ones, both attacking and defensive. And he, unlike the man that is about to go, as it seems, in Pablo Maffeo, doesn't really get any cards as much as I have seen. He has a very, very good disciplinary record. Having done your research as well, and given that this man is looking like he's gonna be a starter, given we don't know, Bruno's more than likely gonna end up in Turkey. I think that's a public secret. He is gonna end up in Turkey. We don't know who's gonna be the replacement. I've said this before, I'll say it again. I'm praying to God it's Lykoyannis. He is a bang on an ideal replacement in my eyes, and he's Greek. He's one of our own. His experience and stuff like that, but we'll get into that when the time comes. But in a direct comparison to Francisco Ortega, what were your first thoughts when you saw this transfer?
Yeah, No, I mean, I think in all regards, he seems like a major upgrade. I mean, I think the thing with Francisco Ortega, I mean, obviously he was a part of our greatest ever success, but as an individual player, he was kind of a master of none. He didn't have any glaring weaknesses necessarily, but he also did not have any glaring talents. Like he was okay going forward, he was okay defensively. You could say he was, maybe slightly above average in terms of his athleticism. He's not a huge frame. So there wasn't anything with Ortega that said starter, in my opinion. I mean, he would have been a fantastic backup, but as a starter, it's just he's one of those players where he kind of just fills the space.
It was his consistency, if anything.
That too. I mean, that too. But I think just in general, I don't think there's any part of his game that stood out to me as like he's really good at that or he's really bad at that. He was just a very neutral type of player. Tignizian, I mean, again, like he kind of reminds me of Tsimikas in some ways, and like going forward, especially. He's very eager to cross the ball and get wide and challenge players out wide. He does seem like he has good athleticism for his frame. I mean, he's 6 feet tall. That's like meter 83, I guess, in metric. So I mean, he's not a small guy. I mean, Francisco Ortega, he was like meter 75 maybe. So you're definitely getting an upgrade there. But he seems like he's reasonably athletic. He's reasonably physical. He's a guy that's willing to get stuck in on the game, which I think is another way where I thought Ortega didn't really offer. And I think that's something that Tsimikas also had. He can be a high intensity player. So I mean, I personally like the signing. I think that he brings actual positives and benefits, which I feel like we have not had from a left back in several years now. So I mean, I really like what I've seen from him so far. The fact that he has experience at decent levels, but I do definitely think Olympiacos will be the biggest signing. I mean, the biggest club he's ever played for. I don't think you can really argue that. So I mean, he'll have that motivation as well. Like this is his big move so far. It's like someone said in the comments, he'll understand the weight of wearing the jersey. Having played for Zvezda, it's a very similar.
Yeah, that's the first thing I want to get up. But another thing that people don't really point out, that I love to point out, this man is still on an upwards trajectory. He's going to better and better clubs. This isn't a rebound move, which is very important. One last thing about Remo Freuler that is valid point. It gives a good insight on the mentality. Most new incoming players say the same thing, more or less. Remo didn't. Honestly, valid point. Very valid point. I want to talk about this. Look, okay? I get that Bruno isn't an amazing player. This man is an athletic freak of nature, okay? That probably one of the most athletic players I've seen play for the team, like pure athleticism.
Definitely one of the quickest.
Yeah, easily one of the quickest. And he's not bad defensively. The thing with Bruno is that he doesn't offer anything on offense. And that for Olympiacos is just nullifying anything he gives defensively. That's why he needs to go. Not because he's a horrific player. He's not. He's just not good enough for this level. This is about Tignizian, of course. His statistics are worse than Francisco Ortega's, but he understands the weight of the red and white jersey and the demands of a title challenge, and I believe that will play a significant role. Mentality. Exactly what we said. A player can be bad in terms of a championship team, but if he works his ass off, he'll be a consistent starter. mind you, again, I brought him up, I'll bring him up again. May we remember what happened with Oleg when he signed, and may we remember that the man left relatively a legend. Okay, no. Cold hero.
Yeah.
Cold hero.
A legend of maybe the past decade. I would say he's definitely one of the more memorable players from last decade.
Land on cold hero.
Yeah. I mean, but like you said, I mean, how many examples do we have of a player that maybe from just a purely talent perspective or an output perspective maybe isn't exactly what we want? I mean, even think back to some guys on the Conference League winning team. I mean, you could look at someone like, I mean, very different position, but like Jovetic, for example. He didn't score 1 billion goals. He was not the best player on the team, but he brought intangibles, right? He brought that mentality. Every time he was on the pitch, he made a difference, even if he wasn't scoring, even if he wasn't assisting. I think you can make a similar argument for Ibora. I think he definitely did bring more on the pitch. But again, the biggest thing with some of those guys, Kini, for example, I was super critical of him first half of the season.
Exactly.
That's the perfect one. He's
exactly who I was about to say.
I thought we were screwed when he started the semifinal against Villa. I'm like, we're going to choke this away. This guy, I don't even think he's good enough to be on the team. Gets an assist, has the game of his life. I mean, to your point, like there's certain things.
I still remember the post game. I still remember the post game.
I mean, there are certain things you cannot quantify on a stat sheet, or even just looking at somebody's talent. Like if they come and they play with that intensity, they play with that mindset, that can make all the difference. And I think one thing that potentially helps that as well. I mean, look at the national team he plays for, right? Armenia is not the best national team. They don't have the best players. He's been a part of some very, very good results with Armenia, and he's been a big part of those results. I mean, go look at I believe it was 2021. Watch the highlights from the Wales game. They went to Wales. They won 4-2, I believe. I think he had an assist. He played out of his mind defensively. That's the kind of thing. If he can do that in the Armenia squad, I mean, imagine what he can do with the talent that we have and that we have incoming. So I mean, the fact that he's played on teams like that are always going to be backs against the wall. The fact that he's played in Russia in the past few years, where obviously the talent level there has dropped because of things going on and them being banned from Europe, and the fact that he can still shine as a left back. That definitely tells you he has some qualities that you might not necessarily see on the surface.
Yeah, you're completely spot on. I think Tiknisian being able to play many positions is something both coaches and the team wants to have on the pitch. And I think if he plays well in the press, and to add to him being able to shoot outside the box would really help in terms of scoring and surprise goalkeepers. He would be unstoppable. I wouldn't go as far as unstoppable, but when it comes to Mendy football, I would actually agree that a player that can be interchanged within the 90 of the game is arguably one of the most important traits this specific coach can ask for. Because may I point back to Bruno playing left wing. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, it's also good. I mean, we play a lot of low blocks, especially domestically. Having a guy like him where you can push players forward. You saw last season, I think that was one of our big issues, that the Paphos game, that this is the one that I call back to. I mean, one of our best chances of the game was Retsos having to come forward and take a shot from 25 yards. We have not.
You didn't have to go back to Paphos. That happened against Nijmegen as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've tried to scrub as much of that from my memory as possible, but having guys outside of your traditional attackers or even your midfielders who can get forward and affect the game like that, I think that was one of the things that I really liked about Biancone as well. He was somebody who would get forward and get involved. He's a center back. You don't expect that from him, but it does add something to the game when you can have somebody step up, even if it's briefly, and put pressure, because that forces teams out of their shape. So I think he brings a lot that is really positive. I think the fact that the background he comes from, and the fact that this will be the biggest signing of his career so far. I mean, he should come in very motivated to make a difference, because he's still relatively young as well. I mean, he's like 26, so I mean he's
at max 27.
Yeah, so I mean he's not even in his prime yet, possibly.
Yeah.
So I mean I think there's a lot of upside for him still as well. So I think it's a good signing. I'm happy with it.
I mean, it's what I said, it's upwards trajectory. Still, he definitely isn't in his prime. One last thing that really surprised me is that he's an extremely aggressive fullback. On whatever way you may mean that, same. Because this man is attacking minded and he is aggressive as all hell. I'm excited. I really am excited because it's something different. It's truly something different. And speaking of something different, Christian Cáceres, I still haven't figured that out. We'll see. The midfielder, the defensive midfielder / central midfielder of Toulouse, the captain, if I'm not mistaken, of Venezuela.
I believe so.
Do correct me. Yeah, I'm pretty sure as well. And the man that is arguably now one step away from Olympiacos, I want you to start while I look up some stats as well, because the comparison you made is something very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a really interesting player. That what I see in watching some of his tape, he almost looks to me like a fusion of Mouzakides and Eze, in the sense that he's very, very good at reading lines and getting in passing lanes and getting physically stuck into a game, which is obviously Santiago Eze over the past several seasons. I mean, that's been why he's a fan favorite, because he will cover every blade of grass. Nothing gets past him. He can be aggressive when he needs to be aggressive, but it's measured. And I see that a lot in his game, but he also is very, very fluid going forward. I think even just the way he moves and the way he distributes the ball looks a lot like Mouzakides. So, I mean, I think, again, like we were saying with Freuler, he brings an interesting profile and one that we don't have currently in the squad. And the thing that I really like about him as a profile and as a player, he's only 26. He's very young for a guy who's captaining his national team, who's playing in a top 5 league in Europe and being a key part of that team. So I mean, I think he is a veteran, obviously, but like we were just saying with Tignizian, he still very much has potential to grow into. I mean, he will absolutely get better. So I think that is all like very positive in my opinion. That I think that would be a great signing for us. And I think talking about a player who can be a leader and potentially an example for some of the younger guys, I think having Mouzakides learn from him some of those parts of his game that he doesn't have already, from somebody who is strong defensively and can get involved that way, but is also a factor going forward. He might be able to help him develop that part of his game, because you can say the same thing for Eze, but his focus is obviously defensive. He's never going to be a guy that's going to balance that with going forward and being a big part of the attack. He'll get involved, but not in the same way that you would expect Mouzakides to do so, like you would see Cáceres. So I think he would be an ideal understudy for Mouzakides, for him to really pick up on those parts of his game and develop more of his talent, because that's the biggest reason why Thrylos Mouzakides has not gotten a move yet. You look at guys like Tsolakis, you look at guys like Kostulas, even you look at some of the other non-Olympiacos Greek players like your Karetsas, like your Kosatelias, guys that have gotten a big move this summer, Zolis, they don't have those, a glaring weakness in their game, which I think Mouzakides definitely does. You cannot play center mid, and I don't think he's necessarily a 10. So I don't think that fits his strengths either. But you can't play center mid and not be able to be effective in those situations of being able to control the game in the middle. And I think this past season, that's where you saw some of his weaknesses get exposed a little bit in certain games, especially against some of the better opposition. And probably why Mendilibar shied away from playing him a bit. He does not have that part of his game very developed yet. So I think bringing in a player who does and can do both would be very positive for him on an individual level. But like we said with Freuler, it also really checks the need for Olympiacos in this midfield.
And I'd argue that even physicality-wise, this man is a very different profile than we have right now in the team. We are talking about someone that's more on the speedier side and more of the calculated side than the physicality side, given he's 1.76 in height. He's mainly a 6. He can also play an 8. And I do want to point out, by the help of the ever so reliable FOTMob, I do want to point out some of his traits comparative to other midfielders, because I feel like that's always interesting to look at, especially when it comes to a league like Ligue 1. And I do want to mainly stand on defensive contributions. The man finds himself on the 81% of defensive contributions. He's one of the most reliable midfielders in Ligue 1. Same with chances created, standing at 71%. Possession-wise, which also is a big factor in our football, he stands at 76%. He's not that much of a goal scorer, but he is as clear of a box-to-box midfielder as you can truly get. And honestly, necessary. I understand the priority some people gave to Gustavo Puerta, but I would rather spend the 10-11 million on someone like Cáceres and fill other gaps of the team in better than to splash 20 on Puerta and lack in other places. Because, at least in my opinion, they're not that much different in quality. And I'd argue that Cáceres is the more fitting player in Mendy's system. He's also a very, very, very good player when it comes to defending constant pressure, as we have seen, in a mix of very good and very accurate distribution, which is arguably the ideal mix that Olympiacos needed right now. I was always going to compare him to Esse, but that combined comparison mixed with looking into his stats more honestly fits a lot more. And I do agree that Mendilibar does need someone like Cáceres. He was a necessity, he was a priority. Mendy said yes to both Cáceres and Puertas, reportedly. That's why Olympiacos worked on both cases, landing ultimately with the Venezuelan midfielder. And another quality addition to a midfield that needed to be refreshed. And before we go into the possible outs and wrap up, there's this one that also is reportedly very close, if not a done deal. Armando Gonzalez, the very promising center forward from Chivas, the man loved by the Mexican side fan base, even though they are quite a bit salty that he is close to leaving them. A very interesting profile, Once again, considered a world-class talent, definitely a different profile than Ayoub El Kabi, which is something we needed. Incredible off-ball movement and positioning. Finishing, as far as I have seen, he's okay. He needs to work on that, but again, the man is a world-class talent. He will work on that. He has a tendency that Masuras had. He tends to miss the easier goals, and this man has scored some seemingly impossible chances. He is versatile for sure. He's speedy. He has a very powerful right foot. Very powerful right foot. And the thing that I do want to point out above all is that this man can be the nuisance we need up front when pressing. This man can steal the ball and get you a goal out of seemingly thin air.
Yeah,
and I think even the price is good.
Yeah, I mean that's my big thing. I hope that we get it over the line. I've seen the reports that it is done. Regardless of the case, like this is one of those positions you have to spend the money on, especially considering we only have one striker who is confirmed to be part of the squad this season. We have no idea what's going on with Taremi. We have no idea. I mean, Clayton, God forbid that he's part of the squad this season. Yeah, I mean, we need a striker. We need someone behind Ayoub. And I think we're at a point as well. We need somebody to push Ayoub and give him competition, because he, again, is another player, like the club in general, has not been right since the beginning of the year. And I think this is a very good signing, especially because, as is being mentioned in the comments, he's one of the wonder kids of Mexican football. You can just go online and see the reaction of Chivas fans that he's leaving. They're devastated. A lot of Mexican fans in general are kind of confused that he's not making a bigger move. But I think it's much wiser for him to come to a club like Olympiacos. When you look
if I could say my thoughts about Fox Sports, I would, but not right now.
Fox Sports sucks in every country. That's all I'll say.
The report you sent was from a Fox journalist. That's why the confusion.
I mean, there's a lot of comments just from fans as well. But I mean, I think if you look at the track record of a lot of young Mexican talents making a big move too early, which I've seen a lot of Mexican fans online also pointing to, saying, hey, I would rather have him go play at a team that's competing in Europe and is a big team than go to Netherlands or Portugal and be on the bench. Right? Obviously that's a better choice for him. And I think, we have the track record, obviously, of players going to the Premier League or other, major leagues in Europe.
Especially lately with the Premier League.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we got Costinha to Premier League. My God, if we can get him
for 12 million. For 12 million.
Again, notice he's a decent player, but we got him to the Premier League, the best league in the world. That guy, I'm sorry, but before he came to Olympiacos, was never going to have a chance to make that sort of move. But just speaking on him as a player, like you said, he does provide a very different profile to Ayoub. But I also think there are some similarities in terms of how he plays and some of the ways that he puts pressure on the defense. One of the things that I noticed, because I watched a lot of film on him, and I also watched every senior goal that he scored. If you haven't, I would recommend it. He scored, I think he has 30 senior goals. He's only 23, so I mean, again, he's only had a few full seasons to get that. But at least half of those goals, the entire opposition team is convinced he's offside. Who does that remind you of? Who does that remind you of in an Olympiacos jersey of just sneaking in and scoring goals, and he's an inch onside because his positioning is just that good and his sense for the space is just that good? the way that he gets into position, the way that he finds spots to be able to score and receive a ball, or even positioning his body to get a header. He has a couple headed goals that reminded me of the goal that Ayoub scored in the Conference League final, where he's like falling towards goal with a defender on his back. So, I mean, he definitely does have some similarities. I think the biggest differences that we're going to see is, he's not as physical as Ayoub. He's a smaller guy as well, so that's just part of it. And he's also younger. He'll probably bulk up as he gets obviously to Olympiacos. I'm sure we have better facilities for all that. But he's obviously not going to be as physical. I don't think he's going to be as much of a hold-up player. And then the finishing, like you said, either he's going to roof it or it's going into the stratosphere. So, I mean, that's kind of the risk reward you take there. But again, he's coming in not as a guy that you're going to think of as your starting striker necessarily, but he definitely could be. So, I mean, I think you kind of balance that. And I also think one of the pros, him versus Ayoub, as we're talking about that comparison, I think he is more technical. I think if you look at,
for sure,
his dribbling, I mean, that's definitely one of Ayoub's biggest deficiencies. It's just like, if you aren't giving him service, he's going to struggle to get involved in the match. Gonzalez is the kind of player that can really get his own chance, right? He can come deep and get the ball. He can beat a defender. He can beat multiple defenders. So, I mean, he definitely brings that profile, which, again, I don't even think, with any of the guys that we've had recently, we haven't had a striker like that in God knows how long. Taremi is not like that. We obviously, Yaremchuk, as good as he was, that was not the kind of player he was. He's not going to come deep, get the ball, and drive towards goal. It's been a long time since we've had a striker who can play like that.
El Arabi, probably.
He was definitely more technical than El Gabi, but again, he was never mobile enough, I would say, at least when he was with us.
Yeah, but he could create chances, though.
He could.
He created chances for himself.
I think, to your point about, Gonzalez, like he can create something out of absolutely nothing by himself.
Yeah.
Which, for a striker, especially at this level, is just kind of rare, because most guys that can do that consistently are not going to be playing at Olympiacos. So I think I hope that we get that signing over. I've seen some reports that it is. I hope so, because that could easily be a 30-40 million euro sale in a year or two, because I think he absolutely has that potential. I think he has the skill right now to really make a positive impact.
Before we get into the comment I brought up, because you brought up the argument as well, I do want to say that the latest report that I am at least seeing is that both players are close. The Christian Castles deal is looking like it's going to surpass 10 million. And in regards to Armando, we are looking at about 9-ish to 10 for 70 to 75% for the rights of the player. I would expect both of them to be done by tomorrow. I feel like it's a necessity for both of them to be done by tomorrow, so we can actually go. Not that we need it against Atromitos, but so we can actually get the squad playing and training together as early as possible. And mind you, we still have like 4 people to come in. Maybe 5 regarding to the sales. And before we get to the sales, I do want to talk about this. It's a clear no, at least for now. It'd be an amazing compliment to Ayoub El Kadi, but let's not forget that we are talking about Ayoub El Kadi. This man, even if he's off form, he's gonna be a 25 goals a season striker. Even in his worst days. If he has a full season, he's going to score 25 goals minimum. I feel like that just ends the argument immediately. Now, for the last subject that I have planned, Wow, we'll probably lose a lot of players. First of all, I want to talk about, not really much to talk about, I just want your opinion on the whole Maffeo situation. Is what's about to happen correct? Is it an overreaction? What do you think?
I definitely think it's an overreaction based on what we've seen. Obviously, within a football club, there are going to be things that happen behind closed doors that we can't really comment on. So the fact that they're even talking about terminating him makes me think that there might be more there as far as just him and Mendilibar, maybe him and some of the rest of the team. I'm not sure. I definitely don't think he's had a rough start, but how many players have we seen had a rough start? That doesn't necessarily warrant terminating he's on a 2-3 year contract, like a multi-year contract. It's just bizarre unless there's something serious going on there. So I'm not sure really what to say about it, other than the fact that I think there's probably more that we don't know. And if there isn't, then I think that's bizarre mismanagement by the club.
Maffeo is on a 3-year contract.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be something very wrong there to terminate a 3-year contract, not even 3 months into it. So, yeah, something bizarre is going on. I'm not sure. If it's just based on his performance, then that's just blatant.
I mean, I don't really remember a player that Mendy has frozen out of the squad immediately. I also don't remember a player that's been subbed on sub twice in a month. So there's definitely something going on. In the start, I really did say that it's an overreaction, but I'm going to take that statement back, and I'm going to say that if the team goes out to find someone better, I'm not really going to act like we lost Dani Carvajal. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of an overreaction. Maybe it's not.
I mean, there's just the financial aspect of it, if anything. I mean, how do you that makes me wonder if that really is the case and it's just purely based on his performance. How bad is our scouting that we can find a guy that is that
our scouting is completely changed for a reason. That's what I'm going to say.
Which, I mean, again, that's fine, but like that's, I don't know. I mean, I feel like terminating a player just because of performance, for the performance we've seen, which again, I'm not saying he obviously has not been good, but like
he's played 33 minutes. I agree with you. That, like, I mean, there's nothing to see.
Yeah, I mean, like if that is purely the case and our scouting was just that bad, then that's a horrible look for the club. Horrible. If there's more going on and it's a personality thing, then that is what it is. But it is a bizarre situation, and again, it just makes you wonder.
Something about Armando Gonzalez that Chiquinho is gonna have a new friend to watch anime with. I do want to talk about Chiquinho because I don't really think it's impossible to see Chiquinho go. I don't want him to go, but I think the whole Saudi scenario is something that may facilitate, maybe not. I think that Chiquinho finally has the chance to play a backup, to rest a bit, get his powers back on, and play as an 8, not only as a 10. That's why I want him in the team. I just wanted your opinion on a possible Chiquinho sale, and then we'll get to the scenario that's more prominent than any other, as it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't see a reason to sell Chiquinho unless the offer is just that good, and also as long as it stipulates that again we're replacing him, because I'm beyond sick of us selling players and not having a replacement ready. Like that's the one thing that I really hope changes with some of the restructuring that's been done since last week. You cannot be getting rid of important team players. Like we're not even just talking about backups. We're talking about solidified multi-year starters that we're just not replacing. So if that does happen, if we replace him and we get a good fee, fair play. I mean, I don't want to see him leave, but at the same time, like it's gonna happen sometimes. But my main concern is I just don't trust that we'll manage that correctly.
Chiquinho is one of the players that I would rather see slowly phased out, like go a few years on the bench, be a golden sub, which his quality allows him to be, then go. I would understand if the club wanted to sell him because he doesn't want to be a backup. That would be something that I would understand. But we'll see. The last scenario that I really want to focus on, because I don't think anything. Yeah, okay. For that's exactly what I have in mind. That the best scenario is for Chiquinho to be a backup 8 as things stand. And the last scenario that I do really want to talk about, because I really don't think anything else has happened for the past hour and some that we've been live, and we've been going for an hour and some on a show that has been the best and most calm in a while. I really wanted your opinion on the Zelson situation and his possible move to Russia and Krasnodar.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's a financial aspect of that for him, and I guarantee you that's the biggest motivator because he's obviously not making a move to a bigger club or a more competitive situation. Obviously, I hope he doesn't leave because at the moment, at least, until we get Fortunis fully integrated, I mean, he's really the only like solidified winger that we have at the moment that I trust. So personally, that far from ideal. But at the same time, like if it is just money and he just wants to leave or he just wants a change of scenery or whatever it is, if his mind is elsewhere, there is also something to consider for the fact that like, hey, do you really want that in your squad? Is he going to be at his best? So kind of a tough situation. Kind of one like Chiquinho, I hope he does not leave. But again, being a business, football's a business. Those things happen sometimes. I just hope, like I said,
I hate how true that phrase is. I hate how true that phrase is. Football is business, and business is business. Sadly.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like with Chiquinho. If we can get a fee for him and we can replace him adequately, I'm fine with that. But that's my concern is that we won't do that.
The final thing that I really do want to say on the outs, because it really does seem like the club is planning to revamp the team at a big level, is exactly what you said. Apart from Pirola and Ese, and of course El Kabi Murakitis, and those are self-evident non-negotiables, in my opinion. I'm okay with selling anyone as long as he's either upgraded, which would be the ideal scenario, or at minimum fully replaced. That's where I stand right now. And in the last few comments, in my opinion, I wouldn't love Chiquinho leaving because he still has a good 1 or 2 years in him, but if the offer is good, then I understand. Yeah, I think that's the fairest way to put it. Krasnodar reminds me of something. Same. One of our better customers for different reasons. In my opinion, if Zelson leaves, I believe he would be quite a wound for the club because he can dribble, shoot, and score, and has good positioning. Get me a winger like Davidashvili if he leaves, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
If he leaves for that profile, we're good.
That's just the biggest thing. I mean, he was arguably our best player last season. You have to adequately replace him if you're going to sell.
Absolutely. And I think it, well,
It's with wingers at Olympiacos.
Yeah, it's not just Elson. But yeah, honestly, a very solid hour and about 15. I think we covered everything that we had to cover. I'm gonna be at least on a semi-normal setup by next show. Hopefully, I'll have a new mic. I'll have a new light even before I'm back home. So, thankfully, some faster upgrades than I expected. I don't know if we'll both be here next show, but as Gav said as well, do expect us to be back like normal now that the season starts as much as possible. And as always, your support is insane. I mean, we are up to like consistent 100 to 200 views every show now, which is an unbelievable jump. And we both appreciate it massively. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.